Two kings stood on the same battlefield. One commanded the greatest empire on earth, the other, a young conqueror who had just begun his war. This was supposed to be the moment everything ended. One decisive battle, one overwhelming victory, one final defeat. But that's not what happened. Because when the pressure rose, when the lines began to break, one king stood and moved forward, and the other ran. After the victory did not slow down. He pushed deeper into Asia. City after city began to fall. Persian control weakened. Resistance collapsed under pressure. But this was more than territory. It was momentum. Every victory made him stronger, more confident, more dangerous. And for the Persian Empire, this was no longer a minor invasion. This was a growing threat, a force that could not be ignored. And so, the empire made its move. This time, it would not be generals. It would not be local forces. The king himself would lead, entered the war, and with him came the full weight of the empire, a massive army, resources from across vast territories, numbers that should have guaranteed victory. Everything pointed to one outcome: overwhelming force, crushing resistance. Darius believed this would end quickly, that size, strength, and position would be enough. But there was something he did not fully understand. He was not facing a traditional enemy. He was facing a leader who did not fight by expected rules. The battlefield would decide everything. And that battlefield was Issus, a narrow strip of land. Mountains on one side, the sea on the other, little space to move, little room to maneuver. And in that moment, a critical mistake was made. Because this terrain did something dangerous. It neutralized the greatest advantage of its size, its numbers, its ability to overwhelm. Instead of surrounding Alexander, the army was compressed, forced into tight lines, unable to fully deploy. And just like that, the battle was no longer one-sided. It became equal, and in war, that changes everything. The battle began, lines advanced, shields collided, the sound of war filled the air, and in the center of it all, two leaders made two very different choices, moved forward, not behind his army, but with it. He led the charge, focused, aggressive, precise. Every movement had purpose. Every strike pushed deeper into the enemy. Meanwhile, Dut remained behind his lines, watching, commanding, trying to maintain control. But control in battle is fragile. And as the pressure increased, that control began to slip. The lines tightened. The fighting intensified, and slowly, the balance began to shift. This was the moment that decided everything. Alexander pushed harder, deeper, toward the center, toward the king. The pressure became unbearable. Units began to break. Communication collapsed. Chaos spread through the ranks. And for the first time, Darius felt it, not just danger, but loss of control. Everything he relied on, structure, order, command, was falling apart. And then, it happened, turned, and fled. Not a strategic retreat, not a calculated move. He ran. And in that single moment, the battle was decided. Because armies do not fight for positions. They fight for leadership. And when the king runs, the army follows. What had been a powerful force collapsed. What followed was not just defeat. It was disintegration. The army broke apart. Units lost direction. Soldiers abandoned formation. The battlefield turned into chaos. Not because they lacked strength, but because they had lost belief. They had lost their king. And without him, there was no center, no stability, no control. They had not just lost a battle. It had lost its image, its confidence, its dominance. And the message spread quickly. The empire could be defeated. After Issus, nothing was the same. The king had fled, the army had collapsed, and the balance of power had shifted. From this moment forward, this was no longer a challenge. It was a takeover. If you want to see how Alexander continues to break an empire, subscribe. Because this war is far from over.